there's more to training than building muscle. What does hybrid training mean to you?
So to me, there are 5, maybe more different adaptations or results you can get from training. And we think about building muscle as like the most prominent one because it's shown to us on social media or just in the fitness industry. But we've got building muscle. We have getting stronger, which is also a very popular goal. But we have also things like speed from more like an athletic standpoint, or we have power, which is a little bit different to speed. It's kind of speed and strength put together. Like say we're doing a max vertical jump. It's a very powerful thing where you're producing a lot of force, but very, very quickly. Whereas if I'm doing like a very heavy 1 rep max squat, that's more of a strength thing. It's very, very slow, but I'm expressing a lot of force. So that's 4. And then we also have the conditioning side of things. Conditioning, cardio, which I say 5, but maybe a bit more because you can split conditioning down into more deeper layers. Like we can say aerobic versus anaerobic versus localized muscular endurance. And it's kind of getting a little bit nerdy. But already we have well more than just building muscle when it comes to training. There's so much more to the human body. And for whatever reason, which I'm sure we can get into down the road in this conversation, so much of what we do has just been obsessively looking at the aesthetics and building muscle as the one outcome. But that's a great outcome to focus on that I think most of us should focus on to a degree, but we don't all want to be elite level bodybuilders. We don't all just care about aesthetics. And even if you did just care about having a really aesthetic body, there are a lot of benefits to doing these other modalities of training for strength, for power, for speed, for endurance that will complement and enhance your ability to build muscle better. In the short term, if you go run a marathon, you're probably going to lose muscle mass. But what will the adaptations be that you get from running a marathon or focusing more on strength or focusing more on pure power output? What will that mean for when you come back to the muscle building work? How can they complement it? And that's part of like what hybrid training means to me. I think hybrid training has become a label for combining lifting and running. And fair enough, you have labels, you've got to name things as they are. But I personally like to think of hybrid, less lifting and running, but just doing as much as you can, like covering all the modalities of exercise and trying to elicit as many different adaptations as you can. Because my goals with training personally aren't to be the biggest. My goals are not to be the strongest, not to be the most aesthetic, not to be the best calisthenics athlete. I want to be the most capable human, or the most capable Eugene, not even human, because there's always going to be people who are more capable than I am. But I want to be able to run, have endurance. I want to be able to be explosive and powerful and strong and have muscle mass like what I see in the mirror, all of these things. Because I've been in the extremes as a bodybuilder where it was tough. You know, I'd go to wipe my own ass and I would cramp up sometimes. And that's just not an enjoyable existence. I get puffed out walking across the gym floor and I get these big lower back pumps, which you can only really experience when you've been at that obese BMI level from muscle mass and just being so retentive of water on a deep bulk where you're like, wow, you get a lower back pump tying your shoelaces. And I think that's just not enjoyable. Great for the gains.
Yeah.
Great for being strong, but not much else. And so yeah, hybrid training, not just lifting and running, but lifting and training to cover as many bases as we can.
Playing devil's advocate here, we can see that there's benefit to hybrid training, but what about the interference effect and not maximizing our potential in a domain?
Of course, so people will always worry about the competing interests. Say we're trying to build muscle and run a marathon at the exact same time. We know that there's going to be some conflicting happening there in terms of the training that you do, but not even the training that you do, but just the amount of recovery capacity that you have. That is finite, that's limited. Like Dr. Mike Israetel talks a lot about the max recoverable volume from a training for muscle building perspective. Like how many sets can you handle a week for your legs? Maybe it's 30 sets a week and then you're tapped out, or 20 sets or whatever it is. The way I look at it is saying we have a max recoverable volume for everything. And he says this as well, but you have this for every single stressor in your life, whether it's cardio training or speed training, power training, strength training, bodybuilding, or if it's your life stress as well. If it's you got kids, you got family, you're sick, you have all of these things competing for your recovery capacity. you only have so much to pull from your bucket or your cup or whatever you want to analogize it as. So the interference effect from saying, if you run, you will lose muscle. No. If you're running limits your ability to do sufficient lifting for building muscle, or if your running impacts your recovery that you can't train as hard or recover from that training hard enough, then yes, you will lose muscle. But as long as you're intelligent with how you structure things and you're not just using the research says 20 sets is enough, but more so trying to fine tune it for yourself and being realistic, you will not see an interference effect. And even more than modern research shows that the interference effect doesn't really exist, where one kind of stimulative pathway like the AMPK metabolic pathway won't necessarily counteract the mTOR one, you're going to lose all your muscle. It's not going to happen that way. But what does exist is just we have finite capacity, and people just try to add more and more and more and more on without taking away, which is where the problems will arise. But it's possible, definitely possible to achieve multiple things and be exceptional at them over time or a long time horizon by just being methodical in how you approach things.
Your experience with leaning into a hybrid approach is one that resonates with me, and I'm sure it resonates with most of the people watching this, is because we get into something, we enjoy it, but unless you're competing at the highest level, getting financial return from it or coaching other people, you're likely to want to start to dabble in other things, even if it's intellectually and physically is the best way to experience it. But that's just the way to keep you sustainably exercising for life.
Yes, exactly. I mean, even for me when I was a bodybuilder, when I was, huge, when I was just completely out of my mind, focusing purely on muscle building, my first instinct was to say, okay, I'm doing everything I can from the bodybuilding perspective, but what can I get from gymnasts? What can I get from powerlifters? What can I get from Olympic weightlifters? Like even when I was bodybuilding, I was doing front lever training. I was doing snatch work. I was doing all kinds of other modalities of training because I knew that it would enhance. So I didn't know, but I was curious if it would enhance my training, and I found that it did. I found, and this is just N of one on me only, so I can't just going to apply to everybody else, but I found that when I started incorporating a lot of flexibility in yoga work, that improved so much with how I was able to transition in my posing and how I was able to access certain muscle groups. When I was doing the explosive power-based work from Olympic lifting or plyometrics or athletics, I was able to get more out of my muscle building training. When I did more gymnastic, when I did more calisthenics with like front levers and planche lean work, that would help so much with my joint conditioning. I can then handle my regular pull downs or chin-ups or whatever for my back or for my chest or whatever I was doing. It was all complementary. And also it helped that I was, 24 years old, so recovering like a beast. You could handle so much stuff. And that's one thing that people also, in people's defense when saying interference effect plays into it, definitely does when, it plays into it a lot less when you're young and made of just rubber and adamantium. You can recover from anything. The older you get, you need to be more strategic in how you periodize or plan out and allocate time to your training, because usually for most of us, when you hit your 30s, it's not that it's downhill from a hormonal perspective or anything like that. It's more so that you've got so much shit to worry about. You're not living at home anymore. You can't just live, sleep, eat shit and train. You've got to go to work. You might have a family. You might have a relationship. You're not just fucking around in college. You've got responsibilities that take away from your ability to just train. And you have very real lifestyle stressors, good and bad, that impacts training. And people are just like, that's wise downhill. It's not wise downhill. You just got to be more methodical. To come back on point to the question though, it is about making training fun. And I think a lot of people, they'll reach that point where they're no longer competing. I'm like, well, what's next? You can't just keep competing or trying to compete. It's like, well, what are you interested in? And that's what it was for me when I was competing as well. Like, I'm interested in other stuff.
Yeah.
And I found it very beneficial. That's why I've been so big on it for the past while. As much as people see me as a hypertrophy or bodybuilding guy, all this weird shit was done a lot for a very long time in my training.
Yeah. And I just enjoy so much that you said that piece about being fun, because the pervasive narrative online is about making things optimal. If you're not grinding to the absolute bone, then you're training like an absolute sissy. It's just not the way that the professional operators actually train. Like behind closed doors, it's all about, okay, ticking the box, doing your session, doing it in a way that's sustainable, like we said, enjoyable, at an intensity that you can like actually manage as well. And I just wish that that was more commonly told to people, because they might feel dejected if they look at yourself, me, working hard, but not knowing that we actually just do like modest effort sometimes, or most of the time too.
Absolutely. I think, especially with bodybuilding and muscle building hypertrophy training, people are obsessed with this proximity to failure. And they take that to mean from the research shows, oh, you got to be a few reps to failure, or it's an unproductive workout, or you're going to train to failure to be hardcore, and all these kinds of nuanced discussions. And they take it to mean that you've always got to be training hard, or that every session should beat you up. And there's a lot of truth to that, where we do need to train hard, but there should be some weeks, there should be some sessions that aren't hard. You've got easy, moderate, hard. That's something that a lot of endurance athletes understand with how they program their running. That should be there to a degree in your bodybuilding and muscle building work, even calisthenics work, where you have easy days, not where you maybe, I wouldn't recommend somebody goes at like 40% intensity and try to grow their legs from that. But I was like, well, instead of 2 sets, you're doing 1 set, or instead of 3 exercises, you're doing 1 exercise. That's your easy. Still send it on that and still like obliterate yourself into the ground on that 1 set. But now that you're not doing 10 sets in the workout, you're just doing 1 or 2, that's categorically easy. And that's the discussion that people aren't having enough of. And that's when they try to dabble in other things, just get beat up all the time, it becomes less enjoyable. Or they're trying to optimize and realize that by trying to optimize without understanding the full picture and how it all looks when it's from a zoomed out lens, they start screwing themselves up and getting less gains long term.
That's actually another stressor if you think about it, because just say you do the exact same workout, but you're stressed because you're not performing at your peak or hitting absolute failure. You could stress yourself out about that and actually have more cortisol as a response, instead of just being like, okay, circumstances permit, for whatever reason, fatigue is this, I'm going to accept that this is the best that I can do today or should do. And just, not having as much like FOMO as like trying to put that full tenacity in if it's not there on the day. It's like that fine balance of not being too easy on yourself, but also just being like ready to auto-regulate if you have to.
Of course, like there should be always a degree of auto-regulation in someone's training, I believe, where there should be a minimum required work that you need to do to build and progress, but there's also a minimum effort that you can do that would at least be stimulative for maintenance. And we need to be able to be good at saying, what kind of day am I having today? Did I have a good sleep with my daughter screaming up all night, or the dogs on my bed? Am I going through a lot with my current work projects or filming stuff for YouTube or whatever? Did I get a good night's sleep? Is today truly a stimulative day, or is it going to be more of a maintenance day? And as long as I'm accruing enough long-term across not even a week, but over several weeks and several months, then I'm moving forwards, especially as we get more advanced, because the gains we're going to be making are going to be so infinitesimal anyway. We need to learn how to not look from week to week or month to month, but several months to several months. Say, am I really big picture mesocycle thing moving in the right direction?
It applies to everything else, like nutrition. You're not going to make some severe calorie deficit in a short day, 2 days. It's like the accumulation of weeks. Same thing with finances, investing. It's applying what you know from other areas and putting it to your training if that's something that you can't apply that to. Just helps you to frame it better.
Yes, absolutely.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make when they start transitioning to hybrid training?
So when people try to combine different kinds of training together, like calisthenics, bodybuilding, flexibility, running, powerlifting, sports, let's keep going, jiu-jitsu, everything, they just add. They say, I'm currently doing bodybuilding 5 days a week. I want to start doing jiu-jitsu 4 days a week. I'm just going to throw myself in there. And I'm going to start doing intense stretching 3 days a week. And maybe I'll think about picking up some marathon prep.
Because I love learning and I've got enough time to, why not just add it on?
It's exciting. And the mistake is you actually get rewarded for doing that very early on from the results that you get, because you make newbie gains. And also because your body is so systemically stressed, you do get that sharp peak in cortisol that sustains you and gives you energy to be able to just flog yourself for a few weeks until, not that the cortisol runs out, but your body starts breaking down, because the cortisol is actually protective of you from noticing just how beat up you're really getting. But it can only do so much until the point where you're like, oh, I'm really fucking run down now. So 100% the biggest mistake is over exuberance, over excitement, which comes from a very good place. People are like, I feel good and I'm really excited to learn and do this, and I'm really enjoying this experience of running or jiu-jitsu or whatever. So I'll just keep doing it. I'm not dying just yet. But then, come the third or fourth week mark, that's where things start to crumble and fall apart. That's when you start to notice, I've got this little niggle here all the time. I feel this ache. I feel like I'm just a little bit more run down. And it's just so subtle that you may not even perceive it until it's too late. And then you're realizing, I've actually been training really hard, but not going anywhere. Because there's a lot to be said about plenty of people, including myself in the past, like you spend a lot of time putting in the reps and the hours and the work, you're doing a lot of hard work, but you're going nowhere because you're not doing enough intensity in that work, or you're not getting enough recovery to buffer all that work to realize the gains. And then it's frustrating because you start training and you're doing so much hard training that's objectively challenging for you to do. You're like, why am I not getting results? Like, must be because I'm not doing enough. So I got to do double sessions, or I got to do more, I got to add in more, so I got to add in more exercises or whatever. And it just keeps going, and then it creates more of an issue where usually you find when you pull back, you can realize more gains because you've got more recovery capacity. What you'll often find is it's rarely an issue of not doing enough. It's not a volume issue, it's a fatigue issue as to why people aren't getting results. So to come back to your question on biggest mistakes people make when it comes to trying to incorporate several types of training is, or even just the one training of calisthenics or the one training of hypertrophy, the biggest mistake they make is not pulling back and finding a minimum maintenance. So whether your goal is just the one modality of you want to get good at your planche, or the goal is you want to do 10 different types of training at once, you need to find for yourself what is the minimum that you can do and still get results. And then pull yourself as far down to that as possible, because then you can add. You can always add, and you should always try to add. But as long as you have in the back of your mind some kind of fallback option to buffer you, then you've got a clean slate to build whatever you want in more of. If you're specializing in planche, you can add in more planche work to your maintenance plan. You can make even faster progress to a point. If you want to add in running, you can. And because you're at a maintenance point, you should be feeling groovy. But I think we've idolized this fatigue and effort and grinding all the time. It's like, you just got to take more train and push yourself harder. It's not what good training looks like, even at the elite level. Like, I don't care if you want to be the next Ronnie Coleman or Phil Heath or Derek Lunsford or whatever. Even they take it seriously and say, what can I really recover from? What's a smart way for me to train? It's not these super edited motivational TikToks of just intensity all the time. There is a period where you pull back.
Being selective is absolutely key. So if you're combining, as you said, lifting and cardio, that's two major stresses or activities that you're including. And that's really important where you choose to start with what you can actually do. And it's less than you think.
Yes.
It's going to be an amount that's just like, you should finish your session being like, I can do more. You'll finish the week being like, I could have done that extra workout. Starting at that minimum frequency is a good starting point when combining things. And being selective, the more that you do becomes important. Just say you are doing weights, cardio, and jits, as you said. Then you've got to be careful with what exercise you're doing in the gym, how much cardio you're doing, what type of cardio. Whereas if you just do the one domain, you can often throw the kitchen sink at the activity and you'll progress because you've got more recovery capacity within that to progress. Whereas just starting to do hybrid training, less is definitely more to begin with, and scale it up over time.
Yes.
We need to respect how long things take. It's not one workout to the next, it's weeks, if not months. Because all the components, like, can your joints recover? Can your muscles handle the fatigue from the combination of different things too?
It's a big patience thing. And I have those issues myself still. I get impatient. I'm like, I want to just do it. I don't want to take the time to be like, you know what? I'm just going to add one run in this week. I'm just going to add one bodyweight session in this week and then I'll add 2 the week after or whatever and scale it up. I'll just see how I go. I just want to go straight to 5 sessions a week. I just want to do it, you know? So I understand the impatience.
It's the excitement of the novelty, as we said before.
Totally. But long term, how much patience do you really need? Not that much. Just literally a couple of weeks to do nothing, or one session or two, like very moderate training. And then you'll know with absolute certainty that that was not enough.
Yeah.
And that you can handle more. And it's such a better outcome than doing it all, snapping something, and then having to come back a month later when you've recovered from snapping something and then trying it all again. You're in the same place long term.
And this is what's difficult with exercise science, is finding that amount that you can actually tolerate. It's so individual. And we'd love to be here and just say, everyone can get away with doing, 90 minutes of cardio straight away as soon as they get into it. But how like heavy are they? Like, have they done any cardio before? There's like so many components as to what guides these parameters. But it's like the common sense approach of just intuition, listening to your body, less is more to begin with, and being patient with it will not to get burnt out, not to get injured, and enjoy it more. Absolutely.
And people think like, oh, these like less is more thing, you're doing less training, you're going to get less results. Like, you're probably not. You're going to make some awesome progress, especially when you're just starting out with these things. Because of these newbie gains, you can get a lot very, very early on that can be very rewarding from not having to do too much.
Yeah. And you'll use performance as a proxy to know if the amount that you're doing is suitable for you. Because they'll get to this point, if you're like, yeah, I'm excited about hybrid training, I'm going to run as much as I can and still continue lifting as hard as I can and progressing, you'll stop progressing.
Yeah.
Performance as a proxy for this will indicate, I haven't upped my weights in 4 weeks. I'm actually getting worse. My running is getting more laborious. I'm finding it really difficult to stay within that heart rate for the same speed and duration. My joints hurt. I don't want to get up and go and exercise. These are all the things that can affirm and just objectively tell you if you're doing too much or not.
Yeah. And when you encounter those kinds of things, the temptation is always to think that you're not doing enough. If you're always feeling burned out and tired, not getting results, like I've been training for 4 weeks, why have I not been able to increase the weight? It must be because I'm not doing enough. That's the temptation. But we're an adaptive organism where sometimes doing less can allow you to realize more out of your training, because it's, again, like I said, it's rarely a volume issue. It's usually more of a recovery and a systemic fatigue issue where you need to allay some of that so your body can realize more of the gains. But there is also the fact that, look, for most people, even like a beginner, how much progress can you realistically expect to see across a year? Like, let's say purely from muscle building, how much muscle can a complete newbie build across a 12-month period? Let's say it's just 5 kilos, so 10-ish pounds. It could probably be more, it could even be 10, and it could be double that. But let's say, just for argument's sake, it is 5 kilos or 10 to 12 pounds. How much is that per month? And how much is that per week? And what does it actually break down into in terms of the actual weight you put onto the bar? Like, what's a realistic strength increase for that beginner in terms of like going from their back squat? Maybe you might put on another 50 to 100 pounds, or even if it was 100 pounds. What does that look like every single week and every single session? It's fucking tiny.
Yeah.
And that is why you've been training for 4 weeks and you haven't increased the weight, because the increments of plates that we have available in the gym are low enough for you to add that on. So just due to the sheer setup, the fact that we don't have 10-gram plates for you to pack onto your dumbbells, so making that little bit heavy for your arm work, that's why you're stuck on the same weight. It's not because you're going backwards, you're not getting results, you're getting frustrated. It's because you need to spend more and more time at this annoying 10-pound weight until you can go up 50% to 15 pounds. But people want to see it as a very linear, robotic thing of progressive overload every single week, add 5 pounds. Like, that's not realistic unless if you undershot horrifically from day one.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people do as well.
That's one thing that I used to be really married to in my early days of fitness, trying to progress all the time, just in weight, reps, everything. As you said, standard progressive overload. But there's something to just doing the same thing a bit better, or just being okay with, I'm advanced now. It might take me 3 months to increase the weight lifted.
Yeah, well, not even being better. Like, I tell people, like, if you came in and did the exact same session, like, here's an example. Say you go into the gym today and you did 100 kilos in squats, and that was a really hard, stimulative muscle building set for you. If you come in next week and you do 100 kilos for 9 reps, so less than what you did this week, it's still hard, still challenging. But because it was less than last week, does that mean you're not going to make progress? Does that mean it didn't stimulate gains? It's still stimulating gains. It might stimulate less gains, like 10% less gains.
It's within that threshold relative to failure. So
Exactly. It's still going to give you something, even if it wasn't better, even if it was the exact same, even if it was just slightly worse, it's still within the window. And of course, I'm not saying just go do 2 reps instead of 10 reps, but as long as you're within the ballpark, that is sufficient. And when it comes to progressive overload, people expect it to be like, because it's kind of what the name implies, is just keep adding weight. But it's more that, no, progressive overload should be more about your body needs time to adapt to the stimulus, which could be several weeks and months, however long it is based on your human condition. And then you will inevitably need to overload more weight to challenge your new self. It's not add weight to the bar and you'll grow into it. It's you grow into it and then you need to add more weight after. It's a slightly backwards paradigm there that I think would help people sort of stop chasing the numbered performance because there's a lot of merit to doing that window of just hard shit for several weeks or months without changing things up.
It's not forcing what's not there, because it's so easy to forget, I've been on a 10-week training phase, one workout, say I didn't progress or I wasn't happy. We're so quick to forget about all that cumulative work and stress that has built up our new fitness when it's actualized with rest.
Exactly.
So for people who have specialized in, say, bodybuilding or one domain of fitness, and they're excited about doing something else, like a hybrid approach, what advice do you have for overcoming the identity of being one thing and like a change in your fitness values?
It's quite deep. It's not even a training thing. It's more like a mental thing. Do you find that you would struggle with that if you were to start shifting towards, say, other endurance training that would affect you mentally?
Well, that's a transition I've made in the past few years, actually, because when I first got into this, I was calisthenics. That was the specialty, everything that I was known for from inception. But then I went to school to become a physiotherapist. I started learning more about the human body, the different systems, the aerobic system, started exploring things with resistance training with weights as opposed to body weight exercise. And there was a bit of I was like a push and pull. Like I was curious to learn about these different areas, but I was known for being the calisthenics person. So there was a lot of insecurity and apprehension associated with that evolution of wanting to learn something new and actually try different things. And it's difficult because I think that we get part of like a tribe and, we connect with a community, and the way things are, especially with like the internet, it becomes like an echo chamber. Like you do calisthenics, that's all it is. And there's less people exploring different facets of fitness, i.e. hybrid training, cardio, weights, etc. So for me, the evolution wasn't necessarily easy, especially being a public figure that was entirely associated with that. But then over time, I just realized that my values of being well-rounded and curious and trying different things superseded that identity of just being the calisthenics person.
Yeah. Look, it's a very challenging thing from like, especially our perspective as creators or as people have this, I guess, respect in one field. And you think, I've got to always be this one expert all the time. And we've got to divorce ourselves from that. Well, I know I've had to, and just say, I'm living my life on my terms, on my path, and what makes me happy. And if you follow me for that, great. If you don't like that, that's great as well. It's just like growing up from childhood, you don't have the same childhood friends. You might have one or two, but most of them probably not. You don't have the same high school or college friends or university friends. Probably don't even like business friends or whatever. You don't have the same people in your life. And when you've built up a following or a name for yourself for a certain thing, it's like those people are there for this season of your life. And as you go into another season of your life, some of them may stick around, but they might not as well. Are you comfortable with that? Or are you thirsty for that validation and approval from that? And can you exist on your own and be happy with that? Forget about the business, forget about all that. Just think, what is making you happy and excited? Because I think when it comes to business or whatever, people can sense that. If you're just going through the motions, teach me another push-up drill or whatever, and it's just boring for you, your content will suffer, and I'll stop seeing you as a calisthenics guy. I'll want to go follow someone else who's more excited to teach me calisthenics, because that's what I care about. But if I notice you start talking about other stuff that I'm not interested in, but I notice that you're so excited about it, it's like, you know what? Daniel's a fucking good guy. I like him, you know? The calisthenics shit got my foot in the door hanging out with him, and now I just want to hang out with him because he's a good dude. And I think that's something people need to get comfortable with aligning themselves with, is sort of backing themselves in that sense, where I see a lot of people who are truly like, who have got that tribe following or whatever. It's not for bodybuilding. It's for who they are as a person, where they could be doing anything. Like, you know, good friend like Dr. Mark Israetel. Like, I love the dude. He's a great guy. And it's not just because he's some fucking meatball of muscle looks like the thing. Like, it's more just because he's a funny guy to be around. I like hanging out and chatting with him.
Yep.
That's it. So I don't care if he's doing calisthenics. I don't care if he's taking up running. I'm still just gonna want to hang out with him and learn from him and just listen to him, just because of purely who he is. And same went with John Meadows, for example. Same deal, where I was very close with him because he was just a good person. You know, there were plenty of bodybuilders I'd interacted, plenty of coaches I'd interacted with. I was like, you know what? I don't care as much about them. I care more about you, John, because you're someone I can just sit down with and just hang out with. And the reason it was because he wasn't so attached to bodybuilding. He was so attached to just, I'm just a dude who does bodybuilding on the side, but really I am John Meadows or I am Mike Israetel or whatever. So if people are, as bodybuilders or as calisthenics athletes or whatever, they're afraid of what people would think of them if they were to then try other things, I'll say, like, you know what, those people, they're probably not going to stick around anyway. Even if you were to stay just with calisthenics, the only difference is if you just kept doing the thing that you were trying to do to please them and not please yourself, you'll just be unhappy. And they will notice it as well. And then they'll leave you anyway. So might as well do the shit that makes you happy and live life on your terms in that sense.
That was great advice. I really appreciate those external perspectives that you just offered there. And they're the conclusions that I've come to over time myself through my own evolution with it. It's just finding that I essentially reached most of the goals that I wanted to achieve with calisthenics, performance-wise. Like getting a planche, getting a front lever, one arm chin up, all these crazy weighted calisthenics movements, and just feeling a sense of there's more to offer people than just continuing to add extra weights or hold an exercise for longer. And that just allowed me to explore different things. Like, I still love calisthenics. I still do that as the primary focus of my training. But it's just like, okay, I've noticed through specializing, there's deficits. I am lacking mobility. Like, because I'm so jacked from doing pull-ups and dips and stuff, I can barely reach my arms overhead. My spine isn't that mobile into extension. There's all these things that turn you into a specialized person because the exercises make you that way. But part of that growth of just wanting to become well-rounded means that I was exploring other things like weighted stretching, mobility work. What about the legs with calisthenics? Like introducing weights for that. And then just learning about the complementary benefits of including weights with calisthenics. Like, instead of doing a handstand push-up, I do an overhead press. Or instead of doing a bodyweight row, I do a barbell row. And just allowing you to explore different areas has been really liberating.
And I still can't believe you hadn't done a bench press.
Up until working with you.
That's weird.
This is what I'm getting at with the hybrid training. And I'm sure this is what other people experience, is there's a whole world of exercise to explore. And especially if you don't want to be the best. I'm sure there's people that want to be the best in certain domains. I respect that. I know like how much sacrifice it takes to get there. But like, as a teacher, is one of my primary core values that, you know, I want to contribute to the world. I want a respectable level, but I don't need to be absolutely elite, which is really liberating as well.
Absolutely. And you know what, like even if you were to specialize for the rest of your life, it just may not be on your cards to be the absolute elite. It's just, there are some limitations. Even if I was still bodybuilding hyper specialized to this day for the last 10 years instead of stopping 10 years ago or transitioning more, I don't think I'd be the absolute elite still, because it's just still not on my cards. There's just certain limitations there. So it's like, instead of saying you want this certain outcome, saying, what do you actually enjoy doing?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, I just don't enjoy doing this anymore. It's kind of getting boring, or it's getting a bit stale, and I want to just explore other areas, because it's like you say, more enjoyable. Like, I'm the only one living in my body for the rest of my life. Where am I getting frustrated with how it's performing? Am I liking how it's performing? Some people would be like, you know what, I really enjoy the bodybuilding. Keep doing it. Keep going with it for as long as you can. Is there really, like, I don't want to paint specialization as a bad thing. You know, if you enjoy that, and there's seasons even now where I'm like, you know what, the next 6 months, all I'm going to do is 95% bodybuilding. I just want to get fucking jacked. I'm going to pull running to nothing. I'm going to pull everything else to nothing.
Forget about it.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, it happens. And that's totally cool. But it's about being just confident enough to be able to make those choices and then do it in a very strategic way, where you're not just program hopping, jumping around all the time and getting nowhere. Because then, hey, it might be a little bit of fun, but long term, it's always going to lead to frustration.
Yeah, it's just a rarer conversation because less people stick to something for 5+ years. Like, we're coming at this, like, how long did you stick to purely bodybuilding for before?
It was about 8 years.
See, that's a lot longer than the average person would fully commit to something before moving on.
Yeah. And then, it's still been very strong for the last 10 years in my training career. Like, I don't think it's ever fallen below a 50% devotion to my training, if that. Like, even now that I say, like, I'm probably the most hybridized I am now, but it's still at least 50% of my training is purely like, I'm doing this just to get jacked. I'm doing this technique because I want to build muscle mass, and that's it. But yeah, like, there's always room to add in more things.
Yeah, that's similar with me now, doing, still predominantly calisthenics, maybe like 60%, and then the remaining 40% of that for the resistance world would be with weights. But it's just liberating knowing that I could put the calisthenics to 100% for a season, as you said, or I can put weights as the primary thing for a season, and just sticking to it long enough to progress, like you said, not just randomly changing every single workout. But yeah, it's been really awesome for me, and I've embraced what you said about understanding that the community will change with that, but it's more congruent with how you want to approach your fitness, because like you said, life's too short to stick to something that is not serving you.
Absolutely, because I mean, it's very hard to not become a dancing monkey in this industry on social media. Be like, you know what, people know me for calisthenics, I'm just going to keep doing that, even if I don't enjoy it, because it's what pays the bills.
Or if someone's listening, they're not a public figure, their social circle, maybe all their friends are running and they want to start lifting.
Yeah, it's like, well, like, you can do things that you want to do because it's got to make you happy, and you got to enjoy it, because that's what's, in this whole fitness game, why we're really doing this, is to be healthy. And that could take many forms. It's probably going to be there for the rest of your life. All these people, all these tribes, all these communities you create, they're probably not going to be there for the rest of your life. Yeah. So you got to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're getting fulfilled from it, you're getting happy from it, and that's bringing you joy.
Because we want everyone exercising until their 60s, 70s and beyond. So the biggest shame that I see is people going to the next chapter of their life that used to be really involved in fitness, like passionate, obsessed, consistent, never missing a workout. Then, as you said, maybe they start a family and life gets stressful. They go from this to either nothing. And that just is something that I would be such a shame for people to do, like, from all to nothing. Just be realistic with your constraints, but still sticking to some form of exercise. I think it's just so valuable across the board.
It's a lot less sexy.
I know, but this will only resonate with the people who have reached that threshold of making fitness a habit in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not for the 20-year-olds.
No, we're not. Yeah. We're not resonating with our audience right now.
That's all right.
So for people who are struggling with body image, how can they get the delicate balance of self-satisfaction with a desire to improve?
I find for myself, when I suffered from the biggest body image issues, where I had very negative self-talk about how I looked and even just feelings towards me, like, oh, I don't look good, they were the times where I had the lowest self-esteem and feelings of self-worth. So for me anyway, working on that would help a lot more with my body image. It wasn't about just saying, I just focus on improvement, focusing stuff. And I was like, I need to just actually make myself as a human. I've got to see myself as more valuable. I've got to see myself as worthy. Otherwise, I'm also going to be comparing myself. Like even there, like comparing myself, I compare myself all the time now. Comparison has been shown as this negative thing. It's like, it's not negative. Comparison itself is just, it's just an action that we do. Whether it leads to a positive or a negative outcome is up to you.
Oh, so it's the space between that thought stimulus and your response with that afterwards.
Exactly. Like I can compare myself to you and what you can achieve with your calisthenics and get fucking depressed. Or I can see it as inspirational and be like, oh, how can I then use that to my benefit? How can I then take that inspiration and motivation and turn it into action and taking some kind of plan in place to sort of get closer to what you have in terms of your planche or whatever it is exercise-wise. The difference between me getting depressed because I'm not at your level or getting inspired and excited, I believe, for me anyway, came down to my self-esteem and my self-worth. So if I was having body image issues or that, it's like, it's not going to be solved by more muscle. It's not going to be solved even if I was to hit that planche and now I'm on your level. It still won't be there because then I'll find the next person who's a level above you who's doing a fucking one-arm planche or something. And I'll be like, well, that's fucking depressing. I think people are chasing this body or the performance goal or the outcome and thinking that it will then solve the image issues that they might have or that they might be feeling. As someone who's been there, I find like, no, it was actually more from working on my own self-worth. And it wasn't just saying, oh, it's okay because I'm improving, self-improvement. It's about accepting where you're currently at, accepting the work that needs to be done. And then are you genuinely excited about doing that? And do you have enough compassion for yourself to be able to say, yeah, you know what, Eugene, you aren't as strong as Daniel right now. And that's okay. Here's what you need to do to get there. Does that excite you? Yes or no? Go do it now. Or don't do it if you don't want to do it. Because I can easily look at what you do and say, you know what, that's impressive, but I'm not willing to do what you do to get there. And that's totally cool. That's totally fine. Whereas the less self-worth, lower self-esteem Eugene would be like, I get depressed by that. Yeah. And I'm unhappy with myself. And then because I'm not good enough. Yeah. That's why I can't do the plan. That's why I can't have what you have. And there, you know, in all other variables being constant, the only thing that's changed is how I feel about myself. So I need to change that. To sort of break free from always having this negative talk to myself. And I've seen people go through that for years, for decades, for their whole life, where they see themselves as not good enough or they're unworthy. And they may not verbally say it, but in the back of their mind, they're thinking, if I did this, then I will become worthy. But it's not going to change. No matter what you achieve, until you change personally, you can try to find a way to get there. You won't appreciate it. The issues will always be there.
Yeah, that was great. And just comes down to awareness at the end of the day and identifying if the comparison that you're making, is it something that you actually value? Because you can see someone doing something impressive, like a feat of strength, or they've got a certain body type of aesthetic, and then you can be like, wow, that's really admirable, but that's not my main goal. I want to focus on my business or my other hobbies and stuff like that. You can appreciate something, and then, as you said, you can take a piece out of that, like their dedication, their consistency, and then apply that to something that is most important to you in a way too.
Yes. Yeah.
How about the argument of, if you're completely cool with it, you can get quite complacent, is the classic like counter argument to, I guess, self-satisfaction.
Yeah.
It's trying to like push for more, or without that element of just going too easy on yourself.
Well, yeah, that's where you got to be honest with yourself and say, like say for calisthenics right now, I've got 0 calisthenics goals. Like I don't want to get a longer handstand. I don't care about getting more muscle ups or anything like that. So I can very easily look at what you do and be like, yeah, you know what, it's not for me. And I'll some people consider that complacency. But I'm like, this is being realistic. I just don't care about it whatsoever.
Yeah.
But as long as I'm moving towards what I want to move towards and work on what I want, and I'm still working hard somewhere and improving somewhere, I'm happy.
But even if that applies to what you are working on, like the energy of just having that self-belief and being able to detach as opposed to like negative fuel, negative self-talk.
Oh, that's where I find it can be helpful to just have some objective numbers of your program. Be like, am I going too easy on myself or am I improving on the numbers? And you've got to sort of divorce yourself from that, look at it a bit more mechanically and say, okay, you probably are going a little bit light on yourself because you are going backwards.
Gotcha.
Because it's not pushing hard enough.
Yeah.
And so having a fallback plan, like having a plan in place is important. So you just keep your checks and balances because we will always be a bit easier on ourselves. We'll always just pull back a little bit here and there. So it's really important to definitely have something in place just to keep you accountable.
So you're being pulled in these different directions, either through internal thoughts or external influence.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I've committed to this plan and I'm going to stick to this structure, give or take.
Yes. Yeah. And make sure you are progressing it. Yeah.
What are the benefits of being a jack of all trades, but a master of none, this more hybrid approach?
It's just enjoyable. It's fun. And that's not saying that being a master of one isn't fun as well.
Yeah, there's something special about committing yourself and removing, I guess, other areas or facets that you can explore. But the constrained specialization has its thing, but then the generalist...
that has its thing as well. Like, that's the thing. Like, they're all great. People use this quote of jack of all trades, master of none to be a negative. It's like, well, why is it a negative? There isn't a negative. If you don't want that for yourself, then it's a negative. Absolutely. And if you want to be specialist, then fucking do that. And that's all for you. Then being a jack of trades is a waste of time for you. But if your goal is to be a jack of all trades, being a specialist in one area, it's a horrible idea.
Yeah.
But it just comes down to the individual. And probably from a meta industry standpoint, we need to change the language around how we negatively perceive hybrid or jack of all trades concept, or even CrossFit or whatever. It's like, no, they're just doing what they enjoy and they're happy with that. And just seeing it as a different segment. It's like, it's not specialized bodybuilding, it's not specialized calisthenics, it's just that person doing what they want to do because it fits with their personality and their enjoyment and their goals and their background. And that's all it is. It should be a lot less judgmentally or of positive, negative, and say, just, are you on the right track for you?
My theory is that it comes back to this community-based, tribal, us versus them type mentality. Because usually we get into a form of fitness, and like we've spoken about now, it's our identity, it's our friendship group, everyone's doing that. What we see on our feed is biased towards that. You start exploring other things, it gets a little bit more complicated to discuss between people. There's more factors to consider.
For sure.
Whereas if you constrain it to, I'm just doing bodybuilding, you can talk about all the things relating to volume, intensity, frequency, etc. in that small bubble. But then you include this other piece of, say, cardio. It just becomes infinitely more complex with how the variables interrelate.
Yeah.
So I think it's just in our way of discussing things really succinctly online, just having snap statements without going into a full-on contextual, nuanced discussion. That might be why there's such like a divisive difference between specialists and generalists.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where, like, for me personally, I look at it and say, what do I want to be? I don't want to be a jack of all trades. I don't want to be a bodybuilder. I just want to be a better human for myself.
I just want to work out. Whatever happened to just wanting to do just a bit of training.
Exactly. I want to be happy with that, and that's why all of what I communicate and put out there, it's all contributing to me being more capable and being the higher functioning human in general, for myself anyway. Whether it's lifestyle-related stuff or training-related stuff. It's not to be a better bodybuilder or to be a better CrossFit or a better gymnast. It's because I just want to be a better Eugene, better version of myself. I want to just be more capable. I want to be able to, hike. I want to be able to run. I want to be able to lift. I want to be able to look good. All of those things. And I don't want to label it as hybrid. I don't want to label it as a certain modality or specialist or non-specialist. Because if I'm specializing in anything, it's specializing in being a better me.
Yeah.
In terms of trying to find my deficits and fill them.
But when you look at it, you're still ticking the main boxes of all components of fitness. You're doing strength work with weights or your body weight to build muscle, tick, for longevity. You're doing some type of cardiovascular activity to improve your VO2 max and all the longevity benefits. Whether in one season that's running, whether it's swimming, cycling, you'll transition between things, but you're still improving that element of your fitness.
Yes.
Different types of methods of stretching, whether you're doing it passively or using weights, you're still going into that. And that's what's really uplifting about what you've said with hybrid training, because you can explore different activities but still get the benefit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So why does mainstream fitness celebrate looks and 1RMs?
I'm not mainstream fitness. I can't. Look, I think it's very immediately obvious when somebody looks good. It's very immediately obvious when somebody's lifting a very heavy weight that you probably couldn't lift. Although probably if we're looking at the two in isolation of strength versus physique stuff is always going to do better, because it's just immediately obvious, like, oh wow, they have something that I don't have. They have something that I maybe could have as well. You know, that's why people like the Sam Suleks, they blow up so much. It's because there's certain people out there who've got better physiques than him. There are certain people out there who've got more muscle, more size, who just better in every aspect from the physique standpoint or the strength standpoint. But what does he have going on for him that's so good is the age and the relatability. Like his charisma as well. He's a very charismatic, very friendly kind of guy as well. But most importantly, in my opinion anyway, part of what's helped him succeed so much is because the demographic that he appeals to, they're all over the social medias. They're the ones like they're of that age group of the early 20s. And they look at him and be like, that could be me. I can see myself in that. Whereas they might look at you, or they might look at Ronnie Coleman in his heyday, or they might look at these other pro bodybuilders who've got better physiques and be like, yeah, I can't see myself as them because they're in their 30s as opposed to their 20s. So a big part of certain physiques or certain things being so applauded and idolized is people can sort of see themselves potentially doing that, or they can relate to it, and they're like, well, that could be, or that's inspirational, or that could be me, or I'm on your level in some degree, and it's aspirational, and yeah, the physical thing is just like, wow, that just looks incredible. It's just such a impressive feat, and it's so much more impressive than, you know, seeing guys swing a baseball bat really quickly.
Same thing we see with the calisthenics world. People can relate to a pull-up, a push-up, a dip, because with some practice, there can be a modicum of success in those things. Yeah. Whereas you see someone like my friend Cy Monster doing plyometric planche push-ups, clapping behind his back.
Yeah.
You're like, that dude's a freak. I can't even ascend stairs, let alone support myself in a push-up.
Also, I mean, there is also the fact that I personally don't understand how hard that actually is.
Yeah, the understanding of...
I can't relate to it because it's just something that's so specialized and niched. Whereas if I see somebody with abs and a big rippling chest or legs or arms or whatever, it doesn't matter if they're a calisthenics athlete like yourself, or if they're a bodybuilder, or if they're a gymnast, or if they're a powerlifter, I immediately understand, wow, that's a big fucking bicep. And I know that I don't have that. I wonder how I could attain that. Whereas I see you doing, you're clapping, planche, push-ups. I'm just like, okay, is that hard? Is that easy? Is that impressive? It's not until I try to do a planche, which I probably would never have tried to do anyway, that I realize, oh, that's a fucking another level.
Yeah.
You just don't understand what you don't understand.
No.
And that's part of why I think some of these things like, pure physique and pure strength, they're so much more appealing and impressive and things that people look up towards, as opposed to more of the performance or even like the mobility, flexibility stuff.
Yeah, I'm at odds with this because to a point, improving your body composition improves your well-being and all of your markers of health. But then you descend down into the like real aesthetic, like competitive body building levels of like body fat percentage. From the outside looking in, you're impressed by that, but that's not correlated with the person's feel and function. There's an inverse relationship between peak performance, say someone at the top of their field with powerlifting and someone competing on the stage with bodybuilding, they've got visually the peak, but they're probably at their lowest point function-wise. The bodybuilder probably feels like absolute trash, hormones in the tank. The powerlifter might be dealing with some joint-related stuff. But it's just interesting with fitness how we can't convey the value of like feel and function instead, right? You know what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely. It's a very hard thing to communicate. That's why, and it always will be. The industry is always going to be focused mainly on looks, mainly on physique. Strength may be a secondary kind of thing. And then some of the performance things, like calisthenics, is never going to be mainstream. I'm sorry.
Understood. We're trying slowly, but it's okay.
Yeah, but and that's totally fine. Like we don't. I don't think we should be doing things because we want to be mainstream or anything like that. You should do things because it's just a modality of training that you enjoy and that you personally resonate with the ability to want to master your body, and it's rewarding for yourself.
For the act of very act of doing it. That's why people ask, "What's the outcome of doing this?" Often it's just to do the thing. Like, why should you learn a handstand?
Yeah,
we can extrapolate some benefits to overhead mobility, endurance, overhead stuff. At the end of the day, you just want to do a handstand. That's
totally.
good.
It's just to do the thing. It's like, why do some people really enjoy cars? Why do they want to learn to race a car? Why do they enjoy BMX bike riding? It's like they just enjoy the thing. And you enjoy the thing of doing a muscle up. You enjoy the thing of working on your one-arm handstand. That is your version of BMX riding. And that's literally it. It's a hobby in a sense. It's an activity that you do, and you do it because you can, because you got a food time with something.
Yeah, and just leaning into a process-orientated mindset more often than the outcome will help people with this feel and function of their body. From my personal experience, when I'm too attached to the outcome, it's some distant thing that's going to come eventually. And we know with achievement of anything, it's short-lived. You move on to the next thing. Whereas the months and years of working on something and just being with that at each step of the way is the enjoyment. And then you can actually be more aware of how your body's responding and you can adapt over time. That's been a huge one for me.
Yeah. Also, none of this stuff is really done for health. As much as we say it is, like the true, I might be remembering correctly, so I shouldn't say the true, but if I remember correctly, I might need to find the study again. But like from a body fat perspective, like what's the healthiest body fat range that improves all-cause mortality rates in men? It's up to like 20 to 30% body fat.
That's wild, isn't it? Because in fitness, if you're 15%, you're getting fluffy. You get out of here.
If you're above 12%, you're fat.
I'm swiping past. I need to see that next body.
Yeah, but like if we're looking at peak performance and we're looking at improving health, it's like weight training, the health benefits tap out. They cap out after about 40 minutes a week of resistance training. And then, so if we truly just cared about health, it'd be okay, one weights workout a week of resistance training a week, and then we do the rest of the time we'll be doing cardio. But we still want to maintain about 20% body fat.
Sounds like a pretty easy sell, Eugene. Do you have a program for that?
Yeah, this is the optimal mediocrity of health.
Yeah.
But you'll live long.
Yeah, right.
So the reality is, like, as much as I say, like, I do this because I want to be healthy, like, I don't want to be healthy. I want to have the capacity and be the best version of myself that makes me happy. And yeah, like even like training as hard as I do several times a week, even sometimes twice a day, it's not necessarily making me healthier. It's not making me less healthy. I should say that as well. Like it's not harming me, but it's not for health. It's because I literally just enjoy this. And that's it.
Exactly. Now, with hybrid performance training goals, should we be cutting, maintaining, or bulking?
Yeah, so diet setup, when you're looking at combining multiple fitness things, I first asked the question of what season are you in? So it could be like, we talk hybrid as lifting, running, but it could also be sports jiu-jitsu, could be rugby. For a lot of people, it could be climbing and lifting, calisthenics, cutting, bulking, maintenance. The question should be, what do you need to do right now with your training? Are you in season for rugby, where you've got very, very intensive training, very, very intensive matches each weekend, which means you need to make sure you're recovering from that. You're probably on a high carbohydrate diet in general. Not necessarily surplus deficit, but just high carbohydrates. Or are you in a period where maybe you're focusing on improving your muscle up, which means, okay, for muscle ups, it's more skill-based. You need a relatively high training frequency, but you don't necessarily need to be having a lot of carbohydrates or a lot of calories. And if anything, you could afford to be leaner. So I tell people first, understand what season of training you're in right now. What is the current 6-month target that you're working towards? What work has to be done to facilitate that? So what work has to be done to facilitate multiple jiu-jitsu sessions a week because you're training for a comp? What kind of training needs to be done to facilitate you improving your muscle up or building muscle or getting stronger in your bench press, whatever it is? Because there should be 1 or 2 primary goals at most. Work out what they are. And then say, okay, what diet setup is required to fuel that performance? And that will then dictate to you, okay, does it make sense to be at maintenance or in a deficit or in a surplus? Because if my 6 to 12 month goal now is I want to add an inch to my arms, it's not going to be in a deficit. It just isn't. It's just not going to be conducive. But if my goal was to be better at muscle ups, I could do it in a surplus and probably might even get better results in a surplus. But I could also, if I wanted to, have the flexibility to say I could do it in a deficit as well, or maintenance. And if I wanted to do rugby, because I was going all out in that, or I was doing all that powerlifting, again, it's different conversations. But it starts with the primary goal, or couple of primary, because we're talking hybrid here, the couple of primary goals you have, pick what they are, make sure that they make sense and they kind of marry with each other relatively well. Like I wouldn't be trying to do a Mr. Olympian bodybuilding prep at the same time as doing my jiu-jitsu. It kind of wouldn't make sense at a high level. But you understand that and then say, okay, what does a diet need to look like to support it?
Expanding on that, just the expectations too. If you're in a surplus, you'll be able to get away with more training frequency, volume, training load. If you're in maintenance, you could probably get away with within the ballpark of what you've been doing, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Whereas if you're in a deficit, a big mistake I see people make is trying to keep adding, especially with this hybrid approach.
Absolutely.
So if you're in that state for whatever reason, if you're chasing relative strength goals with your body weight, for example, then you got to do a bit less. You're not a machine that's having infinite energy. We've got this calorie input, which drives our performance.
Yeah. I think it's a very healthy conversation to have because we're focusing more on performance dictates diet, as opposed to diet then should dictate how you perform, or you even letting your aesthetic goal dictate then the diet, dictate the training. It should be, performance is the goal.
How would you design a hybrid workout from top to bottom in a single session, combining strength, muscle, and mobility?
A few different ways we can do it. My favorite that I'm currently doing is I start with an explosive movement, then I'll go into a strength-based movements, then whatever muscle-y kind of things I require, and then mobility usually falls in at the very end, if it's not already been incorporated into the other exercises. So, for example, say we're talking hamstring flexibility. If I'm doing a stiff leg deadlift or a seated leg curl with a big forward lean, that's ticking the box for my hamstring flexibility. So I won't need to do a lot of extra mobility work for it, but I might add a little bit in. I might add something in for a slightly longer time under tension. Or I might even do something like that as the mobility work as rest periods. So that's the general setup where mobility most of the time, also because for me, it's a bit of an afterthought right now, but it's start or end to help mobilize me for training or to finish off whatever deficits may be in my flexibility work. Or it's done as rest periods, active rest in between my workouts, which often does help. So doing something like stretching your quads, like doing a couch stretch in between your hamstring work for hamstring isolation work, often helps the output of the hamstrings, helps them contract harder, more forcefully, generate more force. You can build more muscle, get more out of them because it's training the antagonist. Doesn't work for all muscle groups that way. Doesn't work all the time, but that can be something that people do use. It helps to condense the workout period. That's really my favorite setup. For me personally is explosive, athletic power and strength at the start when you're freshest, when you have more skill required, and then you'll go into more of the bodybuilding accessory, and finish off with the mobility. So example that I'm taking from like today's push day, for example, I would do something as some kind of rotational throw with a medicine ball, very explosive up against the wall, throwing a ball, which gets me going into this adduction, horizontal flexion, like for the chest, which is kind of cool, but it's not really why I do it. I do it more for the rotational benefits because I don't rotate much in my training. Then I'll go into an explosive dead bench. So off a rack from a dead stop, done as singles. Very explosive. I don't care about the eccentric. I just care about max force generation, max speed, and max weight on the bar. So I'm still lifting like very, very heavy, close to like 3 to 5-ish rep maxes, done very explosively and powerfully. And then I'll go into a couple of exercises. So I do just a dumbbell incline press, sphere chest. You know, just it's more of your typical 6 to 12-ish reps, hypertrophies range, slightly slower eccentric, more of a stretch emphasis, so pausing down there. And then I do, what comes after that? A gymnastic ring fly. Not because gymnastic ring, just because it's the fly variation.
Targets the muscle,
yeah.
Same thing.
It's more, yeah, so it could just be a dumbbell fly or a cable fly or whatever. I just like gymnastic rings for fun.
Me too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a little bit of arm work, some triceps, which is bodybuilder bro stuff. And then I do finish off with some mobility work for my shoulders at the very end.
Okay.
Because it's less intensive, I'm already warm. So it's all about, for me, just understanding what's work I want to do and what are the requirements for that work. So I wouldn't do the explosive bench press at the end because I'm more fatigued. Mobility work there requires you to be warm. So you want to do it probably at some point away from the very start of the workout, unless you're doing an extensive warm-up, and I'd rather just not because I want to save time. So that's how things would look for, say, upper body. If I was doing legs, same kind of thing. So I would do like a vertical jump or a trap bar jump, a weighted jump of some sort. That's what we're currently doing. And then I'll go into my heavy squat session, which I'm doing as Zerches right now just for fun, but it could be a back squat or machine squat. And that's heavy, 3 to 5 reps for strength. Then I go into more of the bodybuilding kind of things where it'd be on this particular squat day, I focus more on isolation work for quads, so it's leg extensions. But it could also be leg curls instead if I wanted to. And then I finish with some stretching for the hamstrings and hip flexors. So it'd be like a long lunge stance, weighted mobility, or a horse stance hold with some weights. But it's, you know, if you were to change the reps and sets around, it could just be a typical bodybuilding program.
Exactly.
If you change the reps and sets around, it could be a powerlifting program. But I'm just choosing to have each one specialized on its own specific outcome. That's how I personally like to do things. But I also have periods where I'll do different days. So I'll do my strength and mobility. That's like a swollen flexi day. And I'll have my power, jacked athlete, strong and powerful day, where I'm doing the explosive jumps and medicine ball work, and I'm doing my heavy benching, heavy squatting, and that's it. Sometimes if I'm feeling really optimistic, I might do 2-a-days, where you do the athletic, powerful strength stuff at the start of the day. A few hours later, had a good rest, come back and you do the swollen flexi stuff in the evening. That's better set up if you have a home gym setup.
Yes.
You're working in the gym as a PT and got all the time in the world. I haven't done that in a while, but that was a very enjoyable way to train. But I definitely do blend it all in one workout, or doing, if I'm doing like 2 different upper days. One of the upper days is more strength, power focused. One of the days more just bodybuilder, mobility focused.
That's the exact way that I also approach a hybrid workout, because that's the consensus of how we structure things, because we know quite definitively that you wouldn't do prolonged static stretching prior to trying to be as explosive or demonstrate as much strength. So we wouldn't put that right at the start before that. So it just gives us a framework of that. Same thing, you wouldn't go to absolute muscular fatigue with your bodybuilding stuff, then expect to perform your strength movements to your maximum ability.
Yeah. I mean, you can absolutely if you want to. Like if for whatever reason I decided I really want to nail my front splits in the next 6 months, I would do a lot more weighted mobility work at the start of my session. But then I'll just expect that my heavy squats will suffer and that my hypertrophy work may suffer as well. And I'm like, that's cool. Yeah. I'm happy with that. Whatever.
That's great that you put that, because it's not that it can't be done, but it will be compromised.
Yeah.
It won't be optimized.
Yeah.
And that's where, for whatever reason, if you choose to change the structure of it, it's just knowing that will give you just clarity that that's the case. It's not like, oh, why am I suddenly 20% weaker or feel 20% more fatigued doing it like this? Well, now you know that that's the reason why.
Yes. Yeah. So I always I literally do that. I write down in my notes on my app, I say, okay, if I'm starting training block now, yes, this exercise is weaker, but I'm doing it second, or I'm doing it third. Whereas last week I was doing it first.
Yeah.
And that's because I'll forget, and I'll come back in 3 months and be like, that's fucking depressing. Why did I go down? Oh, there's a note there. I changed the order up, or I did this the day before. I'm coming into this more fatigued now.
What was your workout split? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's having those notes for yourself, because as much as you think you remember everything, you forget so fucking much.
Right.
But like right now, I'm doing sprints the day after my leg days, whereas a month ago I was sprinting, and then I would do my leg day about an hour after. So I had very different sprint performances, very different performances in my leg days as well. So having that to myself keeps me sane. To be like, okay, this is why performance may suffer a little bit, or be better as well. So don't go too crazy and think, oh, I'm Superman now, I can lift all this heavy weights. No, because you changed the order up. That's it.
And I'm glad you identified the micro and the macro structure within one workout, and within mesocycle, however you want to structure it, that you can do a mix of both in one workout. You can have a day of each. But if you're following that process of starting with those domains, if that's something you want to work on, you'll get really good results.
Yes.
And it applies to everything, even with the calisthenic stuff. If we were to start with more strength skills, we'd start with like a handstand push-up, because, it's a lot more involved with coordination, technique and stuff like that. That's your strength box ticked. Then you can move on to, if you'd like to, those hypertrophy components of just your weighted dips, weighted push-ups, chest flies, etc. And then finishing with the mobility afterwards, if that is the order of priority as well.
Yeah. What's your training like right now?
So with my training, I like focusing on 2 areas of fitness at once. Although we could do explosive, mobility, calisthenics, weights, strength, muscle building, I like to choose 2 things at once. And it's usually calisthenics and something.
Correct.
So in the past, I've explored calisthenics and mobility. So I would prioritize those in my training, and it allows me to actually progress and improve. This current season, I'm doing calisthenics and weights. So same thing as we've just outlined with how to structure a routine. I start with the strength skills first, and then I do weighted movements through just your standard ranges of motion. So a push day would be handstand push-up, and then I'd do something like a barbell overhead press to gain some more volume for that main pattern that I'm working on. Then a bench press movement, some isolation for the arms. That's it, because that would be combining calisthenics and weights. I'd just change that structure based on what I'm doing with that.
Yeah, gotcha. How many days a week do you train?
I do a push-pull leg split 5 days per week.
Right. Have you noticed since doing that hybrid of weights and calisthenics, your calisthenics performance has decreased at all because you're doing less specific calisthenics?
I can't improve on as many things because my recovery capacity is more finite.
Yeah.
But what I do choose to improve is going at a rate that I'm satisfied with.
Right.
Would it be as good as if I was only doing calisthenics? No.
Right.
Because it's just more non-conducive fatigue. Even though you're training the same muscles and overall movement pattern, there's just something different about the closed chain calisthenics stuff and the free weight movements.
So what benefits have you gotten from doing the weights?
More hypertrophy.
Right, it's getting more jacked.
Yeah, it's just
Bigger muscles.
for the goal of getting bigger muscles. Yeah,
Fair enough.
because it's been years of chasing predominantly strength goals,
Yeah.
and I've achieved a lot of the things I want with that. And now it's like the dark side of a bit of hypertrophy. Some moderate rep ranges.
That's so funny.
Maybe some free weights, maybe some machines, because everything with calisthenics takes so much time to warm up, and it's specific and stuff. And if you're not doing your handstand push-ups, you won't get good at them. But there's a lot more freedom of, okay, it's a push day. I want to hit my chest, shoulders, triceps.
Yeah.
And you can be a little bit more, there's more freedom with choosing movements.
Yeah,
I can do a
absolutely.
tricep extension a dozen ways with
Yeah.
weights, whereas with calisthenics, I've got the bodyweight tricep extension.
How funny, because I mean, most people, even calisthenics people, they would look at you and be like, you're fucking jacked. You got muscle. You've been doing hypertrophy training, of course, alongside your calisthenics, or you do calisthenics biasing hypertrophy. But this is like your first time, like actively saying, I want to build muscle.
Dabbling in that. And it's like, it's muscle building training, but I'm under no delusion that I can perpetually keep growing more. Because like
course.
I've built what I believe is a respectable amount of tissue relative
Absolutely.
to my genetics, history,
Yeah.
blah, blah, all that stuff. It's more just the sensation of the type of training which I enjoy,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
as opposed to like
yeah.
3 to 6 rep strength sets where you've got to be fired up, the warm-up's got to be perfect,
Yeah.
everything has to be optimized with routine.
Yeah.
There's something liberating about, okay, whether I get X reps or X weight, it doesn't matter as much in the scheme of things. There's more pliability with the routine.
You've never done powerlifting, or you haven't benched, duh.
No.
Because I wonder how much of a parallel that has, like the rituals that a powerlifter goes through, of the prep, of the warm-ups and whatnot, and the specificity, how much it applies to calisthenics as well. I think there'd be a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding, not so much, because bodybuilding, the warm-up is do your first and just start going. That's
Yeah.
kind of it.
You've got some general body temperature increase
Yeah.
with a walk, and then you just
Yeah.
do the movement.
But for like powerlifting, because it's so skilled alongside like calisthenics, you want to do the extra things, the extra
Yeah.
activations or mobilizers or whatever, because it does make a bit of a difference.
And you look at doing, say, like 4 to 5 movements in a workout. Say you're doing a full upper session where you're doing push and pull.
Yeah.
There's that specific warm-up required for the handstand push-up. And then if you're progressing towards your one-arm chin-up movement for the day, you got to do 2 arms,
Yeah.
assisted, and before you even get to that intensity.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just been more like time efficient to achieve that goal, and just embracing something different for a short period of time.
Yeah, fair. Well, how long is it going to be that you think you'll do this?
Who knows?
Because I mean, you released your hybrid program last year.
Yeah.
Link down below in the
Down below,
description.
fitnessfaqs.com. Thank you for the shout out.
You were doing this back then, of course.
Yeah.
So it's been ever since then. And yeah, how long do you think you're going to pursue it for? The hybrid.
I really enjoy the hybrid stuff. I like the idea that there's a minimum effective dose where it doesn't take that much to maintain it. Like a decent amount of frequency, a certain threshold of intensity after you've done the hard work. You can't have that approach if you're trying to climb the hill, so to speak. Whereas that's what's so good about it, is it doesn't take me that much to sustain those movements. I'm doing still my big compounds for pulling, pushing, and I've got that base from weighted calisthenics where I could, with a specialization phase, commit to it for several months and get some really good results.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's been a bigger game changer for me is cardio.
Oh, really? So what have you added in?
Well, about 2-3 months ago, I had a podcast with Alec Blennis.
Oh, yeah.
You've
Yeah.
done one with him, and you just really opened my eyes to this world of cardio stuff.
So you're running?
So I'm running, yes. So for the last 3 months, for the first time in my life, I've added in cardio, and I've been very mature with it as well, because I've noticed certain things as I've introduced it.
Well, what have you noticed?
Well, I started out with just 2 20-minute runs per week, and I know that's not even meeting the, what is like 90 to 150 minutes that you should do. So I'm not getting any like game-changing like adaptations from it.
Yeah.
But even then, it's just like knowing how long things take to adapt. Like introducing an outdoor run instead of a treadmill run, my Achilles was sore.
Oh, it's so different.
But then I did it again another time the following week, and I was fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just, slowly, gradually improving it to now I've done 2 times 45 minutes.
Okay.
And I'm just sitting on that for a little bit,
Yeah.
because the impetus for this was, it's a new domain of fitness. I wasn't happy with getting fatigued on a set of like 15 rep split squats, feeling out of breath, just like between, just daily activity.
Yeah.
It's humbling because you're like, I've got this strength and, aesthetic.
Absolutely.
But you're like not that functional.
Yeah. Yeah. How interesting. I started doing hill sprints on the treadmill. I've been doing a lot of outdoor running and sprints outdoors, but yeah, going to the treadmill, I was like, this is fucking hard. It's so different being on the treadmill because I'm used to being outdoors.
Oh, yours is the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I've found, this is just my N of one theory that I've come up with. When I was doing the outdoor runs, I found it much harder to constrain my intensity.
Yes, absolutely.
So like different terrain, maybe going incline, decline, the different surfaces you're on.
Yeah.
Just the very act of seeing other people around you can just
Totally.
innately just make you want to speed up, slow down.
I'm still, I've been doing running now, specifically training for like two years, but I still consider myself a complete newbie, but I need to use this Garmin watch, to keep me accountable for the pacing and a rough intensity. Otherwise I'll go too hard too quickly, and then I burn out. I'm like, why was that so hard? Oh, because I was going extra 30 seconds on my split or whatever. That's why it was so hard. Even though it felt good at first, but then halfway through I just bonked. I was like, oh shit, this is not good. Everyone's different, of course, but I'm still in that zone, which any newbie does, where you need an external thing keeping you constrained, especially when you're outdoors. Because if I change terrain, it all goes out the window.
That's why I found the treadmill a good coach in that respect, because I've got it on the limit.
Yeah.
If I'm not on that speed, I'm either going to hit the front or fall off. And I've just personally found a bit more friendly on the body because there's a bit of that impact reduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start doing more treadmill work, I think, just because it's getting cold here and I can't be outdoors all the time. And it's depressing.
Where did you learn from doing some sprints as well? Because you've done both low intensity and sprints.
So sprint specifically, that's only really started this year. So it's been, we're in May now, so it's been 5-6 months. That's always been the goal. Like when I first started running, well, I shouldn't say that. My first goal was I want to be able to run 5K. And this was a few years ago, because I grew up not just hating running, but having very negative experiences with running. Where, I don't know, maybe for yourself as well, in high school, in gym class, they say, oh, you got to like do a warm up, you got to run or whatever. I would always come last in those runs.
And it's the visual of it too. You're seeing everyone.
Totally.
It's pretty traumatic as a kid too.
But even I don't give a shit about that, Like, I don't care about coming last. But more importantly, I was being beat by the fat kids. And even that, I didn't care about that. Like, I was like, cool, that's fine. But the coaches did. The PE teachers saw me as a small Asian kid who structurally should be good at running. Because like, oh, you're not fat like the other kid. You should be able to run this. Why are you're sandbagging? I was like, no, I'm just fucking dying. I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say they picked on me, but it was a little bit of like, hey, you're sandbagging shit, get your shit together. Like, I'm literally trying my hardest. And it wasn't until I started learning about biochemistry and like the aerobic system and what happens when you go too hard and like your fuel usage. I realized, what I was doing was I was doing this 5-minute run or whatever as part of the warm-up drills, and I was just going hard from the start. Yeah. And no matter how hard you go, you're not going to run the entire distance in that 30-second window, but in a 30-second window, you're going to hit your threreshold.
That aerobic threshold.
Yeah. And that's where he's going to bonk out. I was like, I was treating it like a sprint.
Yeah.
Because nobody ever taught me differently. I just thought, going for a run, just run. Just do it. Nothing about pacing, nothing about like just slow and steady and sustainable.
But it was more archaic knowing that there was people that were playing team sports.
Yes.
They could run at a faster speed in their aerobic threshold. Yeah. Whereas, as you said, in untrained people, you get there and you'd be struggling. I had the same thing with the beep test. You're seeing the soccer dudes still running after 40 minutes.
So for me, like running has always been like a negative thing. And I was like, okay, my first goal is I want to be able to run a 5K and actually structure it. And I realized, okay, I can do this. And then I did that. But then after that, it was, I want to sprint. Because I see sprinting as probably the ultimate expression of explosive power, of strength, of skill, and of course, if depending on how you're doing it, cardiovascular endurance or cardiovascular fitness. And sprinting is surprisingly dangerous. especially when you're jacked, when you have muscle, when you have strength, when you have power. Like if you can squat double body weight or deadlift double body weight, you are going to be dangerous, like to yourself.
Throw age in the mix too.
Yeah.
As a physio, I can't tell you how many mid-30 somethings I saw that picked up like recreational basketball or soccer, haven't played, just Achilles, calf.
Yeah, everything just gets hamstring. It's like, so one of my goals is I want to sprint because I think it's a very enjoyable and cool thing to be good at. But more importantly, I just see it as a good expression of like fitness, because the amount of work you have to do to make sure you've got the timing right, the skill, the rhythm, the mobility for it, then just the balance in your technique, it's quite tough. It's not just like get out there and sprint hard. That works, but you got to make sure that, or you eventually got to start learning about how to make it more efficient and more powerful and express your true capacity. And that's been a lot of fun. That's been a lot of fun work.
What are the peripheral things that you've done to support that practice to keep yourself, I guess, reducing injury risk?
Yeah.
And making sure that you're getting the benefits too.
Most important is having a plan to follow that has intensity programmed in. Because if I told you we're going to go for a 100-meter sprint, you'll fucking yeet it and you'll probably tear something. But if you say we're going to 100-meter sprint, but you've got to keep it at an RP of 7, like 70%. You know, you should be hard, you'll be puffed out, you'll be kind of dead by the end of it, but you won't be completely exhausted. Just having that makes all the difference. And then of course, like different warm-up drills, different running drills, different like, you know, even things like Copenhagen planks and hip flexor marches, little things just to work the areas, that just helps a bit. Like I did find doing a lot more Copenhagen adductor work and doing more hip flexor raises helped a lot with my ability to pull my knees up and through to help my stride. But that's a very personal thing. But I think more importantly than anything else is having some kind of structure in place that curbs your intensity. Because especially with our background as lifting, we know how to push hard. And when you're no longer limited by the weight that slows you down, you'll just fucking go. And it can be dangerous, one, but I'm not going to fearmonger. I'm more just going to say, just because you can go to like 100% intensity doesn't mean that's how you should be training. Like most training for calisthenics, for weights, for sprinting, for running, most of the productive training that's going to improve you long-term is going to be submaximal. You know, like Usain Bolt, he's not doing his fucking 9-second 100-meter sprint every single day. He's doing a lot of work at 80%, at 70%. And it's still quick, but it's easy for him. But that's what's going to be building up the base performance that will then allow him to express the top-end speed and top-end power when it counts. And that's what we need to get good at. That's what we do with training in the gym as well.
How about testing 1RMs relative to that? Because most of the time we spend is at a manageable intensity. Do you think there's much merit in the average person testing their max or getting those extreme baselines?
Yeah, outside of for funsies, no. I think it's just not worth it. I don't think there's any point in your average person, even your intermediate advanced trained individual, unless if you have specific strength goals as a powerlifter, I don't think there's much merit apart from enjoyment to do a 1-rep max test, because it requires a lot of skill to be able to confidently say we're scoring a deadlifting, do that 1-rep max, that expression of your strength. And you can improve your 1-rep max by say 20 kilos just by practicing the art of lifting a heavy weight, not because you built more muscle or actively got stronger, that your brain's got more coordinated. Like big whoop. Like that's not really true strength. That's just you revealed a little bit more. Because I can probably, in most people, if they're like in that paradigm, they're not powerlifters, probably increase their 1-rep max by 10-20% in a week. In a session, I can probably increase it just by teaching them the right technical things to unleash that strength. Like, okay, so if we're going to use this for the Gen Pop person or even intermediate bodybuilder who's not a specialist powerlifter, let's do a 1-rep max test. For what purpose? It's going to be a flawed test. It's not going to give me an accurate result.
Because they're not spending their time in that environment to have that.
So if anything, it's like you have training maxes. Your 6 to 8 rep max, your maybe 3 to 5 rep max is something that is more familiar to you, what you're doing in your training. So I would keep a close eye on what is your 5 rep max on these lifts. And I care about that improving. But whether we take that to a 1-rep max, it's very, very inaccurate. And you'll see that in a lot of like those 1-rep max charts where they are surprisingly accurate. Where if you can do this weight for 5 kilos, you should be able to do this weight for 1. But most people physically can't, even though they have the machinery and the hardware for it, because the software of the brain hasn't learned to do it appropriately. Which is, that is what it is. If you care about that, work on it, but most people don't.
I will add there is merit in doing a heavy single to get used to lifting heavy weights as well. And this doesn't have to be a true 1RM where you're slapping yourself on the face. There's that danger of it. It's an amount that you are pretty confident that you can do as a single. You could probably get 2 even. But that's just great to do as a touch point to make sure that you're understanding how to lift those heavy loads, even if your goal is hypertrophy, I've found.
Oh, yes.
Because that can really transfer well to, okay, done that top single on bench, decrease the weight down. It just allows you to make yourself progress within that, say, 8 to 12, 8 to 15 rep range as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it just feels lighter when you go back down. If you're doing in that same session as a top set for 1 to 5 reps and then drop down to your hypertrophy work, 100%. But I mean, people forget that, like a big part of the mechanisms for hypertrophy is you need to get good at recruiting your muscle fibers. You need to get good at activating those type 2 muscle fibers, and so you can apply attention to them. And doing their very heavy work is a great way to force it. Like we get you'll get probably max motor recruitment doing a maximal vertical jump in your legs. You also get that maximal recruitment doing a very, very heavy weight. Anything above 85% roughly, so like a 3 rep max or more. So that will then translate to your hypertrophy work where muscles are now primed and now awake, essentially. You'll be able to apply attention to them more effectively and use them more effectively in your hypertrophy stuff.
And of course, the 1RM stuff is just some arbitrary thing that we've determined as squat, bench, deadlift. That's what we're going to measure strength as. And we should know that there's no real point in doing that for everything, really. Like, who's going to check their 1RM on a barbell row or on a curl, for example? It's just using common sense with that side of things too. Even if it's this top single stuff, you wouldn't go apply it to your bicep curl and then drop it down. It's a bit
before.
You have before? Okay, that's the ultimate seed of secret as we close this up.
Yeah, I've been doing like 2 rep max preacher curls. Or I'll do like a 1 rep max machine row, not a barbell
on a
row.
machine, you've got to be on the machine.
Yeah, I will do that for the same benefits of the recruitment, and also just like because, again, part of my training is this preparedness and overall performance is sometimes you are demanded for like a pretty fucking heavy curling action. I think it's an important thing to have, or like you're holding something to your body. Maximal load for 1 rep, like I'm curious what 1 rep max would be on this machine base.
And it's just another thing to have as a PR, because we've been in this for so long, squat, bench, dead, you get to the top, but there's all these other movements to explore. And
like, yeah, nobody cares except for even me, I don't care that much. It's just part of my training.
For sure.
That recruitment.
Awesome. Eugene, that was a pleasure, man. Where can people find out more about your work?
You can find me on YouTube. Sure, link will be somewhere. YouTube, Instagram. You can find my app, Ganbaru Method, somewhere as well. Find more programs, coaching stuff, all on there. Thank you for having me on here.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure, man.